I think I didn't do anything wrong, just made a joke everyone already knew was true. And now there's a legal letter on my doorstep. He's really suing me. For words, over a post that barely got 200 likes. But maybe that's what happens when you humiliate a man who finally decides to fight back the only way he can. Before we dive deeper into this story, I have one small request. Please subscribe, drop a like, comment, and hit that hype button to boost this channel so more people can discover these incredible stories. My name is Sabine Lowell. I'm 33, and until a few months ago, I thought I had the perfect mix of confidence, humor, and control. Noah, my husband, or I guess soon-to-be ex-husband, used to say I could turn any situation into a performance. He meant it as a compliment. I took it that way too. We'd been married 5 years, no kids, decent house, comfortable life. Too comfortable, maybe. Things got predictable. Noah worked long hours at his clinic, came home tired, and barely talked. I joked that I might as well be living with a roommate. He didn't laugh. That's the thing about him. Always so serious. I used to think it was maturity. Now I see it was weakness. He couldn't handle jokes, couldn't handle me. I liked to lighten things up online, posts about marriage, little stories that made people laugh. My friend said I had a gift for saying what others were too afraid to. So when I made a post teasing that some men talk big but don't exactly measure up where it counts, it felt harmless. It wasn't even specific. Everyone knew it was a joke, except him. Noah read it the next morning before work. He asked if it was about him. I told him not to be ridiculous, but the way his face changed, the way he just stared at me without speaking, it was like I'd reached inside him and turned something off. I tried to brush it off, told him to stop acting like a child. He left without another word. I thought he was sulking. I even texted my sister about it, said he needed to toughen up. She replied, "You went too far this time." I laughed. Too far? Please. It was one post. Looking back now, that was the moment everything shifted. He stopped talking, stopped coming home early, stopped reacting to me at all. And I thought that meant I'd finally won. What I didn't know was that Noah wasn't retreating. He was planning. The barbecue was supposed to be fun. Our friends filled the backyard with laughter, beer bottles, and loud music. I was in my element, glass of rosé in hand, telling stories that had everyone howling. Noah sat beside me, quiet as usual, sipping his drink like he wished he was somewhere else. That bored look on his face, it always made me want to poke at him, just to see if I could get a reaction. So when one of the guys started joking about relationships, asking who wore the pants at home, I couldn't resist. I said loud enough for everyone to hear that in our house, Noah didn't even wear the right size. Everyone burst out laughing. It was easy, instant attention. I followed it up with a wink and said something like, "It's fine though, he's got other qualities." Kind of. The laughter doubled, a mix of shock and amusement. Noah froze, his smile stiff. I thought he'd laugh it off like always. He didn't. He put down his beer and walked inside without a word. The moment stretched awkwardly before someone clinked their glass and changed the subject. I shrugged it off, pretending I wasn't embarrassed, and went right back to my stories. I told myself he'd get over it, that men were dramatic about ego things. Later that night, I posted a photo from the party with the caption, "Some men talk big but can't back it up. At least my husband's humble." It got likes within minutes, little laughing emojis from my friends, even a few "you're savage" comments. It felt good, like validation that I was funny, bold, the kind of woman who didn't let her man control the narrative. When Noah came out of the shower, I showed him the post, waiting for him to smile or roll his eyes. He didn't even look at it. He just said he was tired and went to bed. The next morning, his side of the bed was cold when I woke up. His car was gone, his social media deleted. I thought maybe he was making a point, trying to guilt-trip me into deleting the post. I texted him a simple, "You okay?" No reply. By noon, he still hadn't come home. My sister called after seeing my post and said I should take it down before it got worse. I laughed, told her she was being dramatic. But as I refreshed my feed and saw that Noah's name had vanished from my followers, I felt something tighten in my chest. I didn't know it yet, but that was the start of his silence and my downfall. For the first few days, I played it cool. If Noah wanted space, fine. Let him sulk. I wasn't going to chase him over a harmless joke. When my coworkers asked why he hadn't been posting their usual weekend photos, I said we were taking a break and laughed like it was my idea. The truth was, I hadn't heard a word from him. No calls, no texts, nothing. Even his family didn't answer when I reached out. His cousin Colleen, who worked in law, sent me one short message. "He's consulting someone. You should probably stop posting about him." I screenshotted it and sent it to Theo, the new hygienist at work who'd been flirting with me for weeks. He texted back, "Some men can't handle strong women. Keep doing you." That made me feel better. I started showing up to work early, staying late, joking around with Theo just to feel wanted again. I told my friends Noah was emotionally distant and that I'd spent years walking on eggshells around his moods. They believed me, or at least pretended to. I added a few more posts online, little digs that didn't mention him by name. Things like, "Some men look like they could protect you, but fold faster than cheap chairs." My followers loved it. Even my mom commented a laughing emoji. Then one afternoon, a man in a grey suit came into the clinic asking for me. He handed me an envelope and said, "You've been served." Inside was a letter full of legal words I didn't understand. Defamation, public humiliation, damages to professional reputation. I laughed out loud, thinking it had to be a mistake. Noah, suing me. I sent a photo of the papers to Theo, who wrote back, "He's bluffing. He just wants control." That night, I posted another story, me with a glass of wine, captioned, "Imagine suing your wife because you can't take a joke." It got hundreds of views. But later, when I checked my phone, there were no laughing emojis, just silence. My sister had unfollowed me. My mum called, voice tight, asking what I'd done. "He's serious, Sabine," she said. "You should talk to someone." I brushed it off, but when I looked at the printed papers again, at the words, "evidence of emotional and professional harm," I felt my stomach twist. Noah wasn't bluffing. He was building a case. By the third week, the story had taken on a life of its own. What started as one joke had turned into gossip that followed me everywhere. Patients at the dental office whispered when I walked past. Someone printed my post and taped it in the break room before the manager tore it down. I laughed it off, pretending I didn't care, but I could feel the heat of judgment everywhere I went. Theo tried to keep things light, joking that fame always comes with haters, but even he started to act strange, more careful, less flirty. I caught him deleting our messages one afternoon and asked what he was doing. He said he didn't want to be dragged into personal drama. That's when I realized people were starting to choose sides, and most of them weren't choosing mine. Still, I kept up the act. I told everyone Noah was trying to financially punish me into silence. When my sister asked what that meant, I said he was playing the victim to ruin my career. I even convinced myself it was true. I started calling him controlling, emotionally distant, maybe even manipulative. The irony didn't escape me, but I didn't stop. It was easier to attack than admit I'd gone too far. My mum tried to calm me down, saying, "You can't fight every battle online, Sabine." I told her, then maybe he shouldn't have made me feel like I was nothing. A few days later, I went out to lunch with coworkers, half to escape the tension, half to prove I was still confident. We went to this small restaurant downtown, and I ordered wine before noon just to feel bold again. Someone mentioned Noah's name quietly, and I rolled my eyes. "He's the type who thinks silence makes him deep," I said. "Really, it just makes him a coward." The table laughed politely, but the energy felt forced. I noticed one of the assistants checking her phone and whispering to another. 10 minutes later, I knew why. A coworker from another branch had reposted my original joke on a local gossip page, tagging me. The caption said, "Imagine mocking your husband like this and then crying when he files a case." Hundreds of comments poured in, some calling me cruel, others calling me brave. But the tone wasn't admiration anymore. It was fascination, the kind people reserve for watching slow disasters. When I got back to the office, my manager asked to speak with me privately. She said she'd received an email from Noah's lawyer about online statements potentially defaming his professional reputation. I laughed and said, "He's really doing this?" She didn't smile. "You should take this seriously, Sabine," she said quietly. "It's not just about your marriage anymore. It's about liability." I nodded but left early anyway, telling everyone I had a migraine. On the drive home, my hands wouldn't stop shaking. I turned the radio up, hoping to drown out the thought that maybe, for the first time, I wasn't in control of the story. That evening, my sister came over uninvited. She looked pale, nervous. "You need to stop," she said, standing in my kitchen. "He's documenting everything." I told her not to believe his side of things, that he was manipulating her too. "You're the one manipulating everyone," she said. "He hasn't said a single bad word about you." That stung more than I expected. Silence was supposed to make him look weak, not noble. I tried to turn it around, asking if she really thought I deserved this. "You humiliated him, Sabine," she said quietly, "in front of everyone." I laughed bitterly, said something about freedom of speech, and told her to leave if she was going to take his side. She did. That night, I couldn't sleep. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw Noah's expression from the barbecue, the moment before he stood up and walked inside. It wasn't anger, it was disappointment, the kind that feels worse than yelling. Around midnight, my phone buzzed. It was an email notification from a sender I didn't recognize. Lowell v. Lowell, notice of proceedings. My stomach dropped. It was official court documentation, attached with a full PDF listing my posts, screenshots of comments, even my text to Theo. The subject line simply read, "Evidence Exhibit Compilation." I scrolled through each page in disbelief. There were screenshots of group chats where I'd bragged about making him squirm, comments where I'd compared him to a houseplant with a paycheck. Even things I thought I'd deleted were there, every timestamp neat and organized. At the end of the file was a note from his lawyer. "Client requests confidentiality and will not engage in public retaliation. All communication moving forward through counsel." I sat in the dark kitchen staring at my reflection in the window, trying to find the version of myself who thought this was just a joke. I couldn't. My phone buzzed again. It was Theo. I thought he was checking in, but the message was short and cold. "Hey, my lawyer said I shouldn't contact you anymore. Hope you get things sorted." I wanted to scream, but nothing came out. The next morning, I walked into work, and every conversation stopped. One of the receptionists pretended to shuffle papers just to avoid eye contact. The office manager told me a reporter had called, asking for comment about the lawsuit involving Dr. Lowell. I felt the blood rush to my face. I told her I didn't know anything about it, but she didn't believe me. By lunch, my name was trending locally with phrases like "mocked her husband" and "now facing consequences." That afternoon, while I was cleaning up my workstation, a delivery man came in holding another envelope. He said, "Sign here." My hands trembled as I scribbled my name. Inside were the formal summons papers, stamped, dated, and real. At the bottom of the page was the court date, followed by the phrase that made my heart stop. Plaintiff requests full damages and written retraction. I wanted to call Noah, to scream, to demand why he was doing this to me instead of just talking, but I already knew the answer. He wasn't fighting me in public anymore. He didn't need to. He'd already found a way to win without saying a single word. For a few days, I pretended nothing had changed. I still went to work, smiled at patients, posted pictures of coffee cups with captions like, "Peace before the storm." But the truth was, I couldn't eat, couldn't sleep. Every notification made me jump. My lawyer, yes, I had to get one, told me to stop posting anything online until the hearing. She said it like a warning, but I couldn't stop myself completely. The silence made me feel invisible, like Noah had erased me twice, first from his life and now from my own voice. So I messaged Theo again, even though he'd said his lawyer told him to stay out of it. "Can we talk? I just need a friend." He didn't answer until late that night. "I don't think that's a good idea. I'm sorry." I sat staring at that message for what felt like hours. The one person who had encouraged me, who'd told me I was strong and fearless, now didn't even want to be seen texting me. I tried to tell myself he was just scared, that men always fold when things get serious, but deep down, I knew he wasn't scared. He just didn't want to be associated with me anymore. The woman who had once seemed bold and funny now looked reckless and cruel to everyone, including him. That Friday, I drove to his apartment anyway. I told myself I just wanted closure, but really, I wanted reassurance that someone still saw me as right. He opened the door halfway, already dressed like he was going somewhere. He said he couldn't talk long, that he had a meeting. I asked if he'd testify for me if it came to that, say it was all just jokes, that we'd both laughed about Noah together. His face changed completely. "You're not dragging me into this," he said. "You told people things about your husband. That's on you." His voice was low, controlled, but final. I told him he'd used me, that he'd made me feel like I could trust him. He just said, "Sabine, stop blaming everyone else." Then he shut the door. I sat in my car for a long time, gripping the steering wheel until my knuckles hurt. I wanted to scream, but all that came out was a small, ugly sound that didn't even sound like me. When I finally drove home, I found my mother sitting on the porch. She looked tired, older somehow. She said she'd come because Noah's lawyer had called her. Apparently, they were reaching out to family for mediation. She said, "He doesn't want to ruin you, Sabine. He just wants the truth acknowledged." I snapped back, "There is no truth. He's turning everyone against me." She didn't argue. She just said quietly, "You turned people against him first." Then she stood up and left. That night, I opened my laptop and read through the official complaint again. The numbers made me dizzy. Damages, legal fees, potential fines. There was even a note about his clinic losing 2 clients after my posts. I felt this rush of panic, then anger. How could one man cause this much chaos by staying silent? I opened a blank status update and typed, "Some people use lawyers because they can't handle real conversation." My finger hovered over post. Then I deleted it. For once, fear overpowered pride. The next morning, a letter arrived by courier. It wasn't from the court, it was from Noah himself. A single page, handwritten in his neat, careful print. It said, "This isn't revenge. It's protection. I deserve my name back. You don't have to apologize to me, but you will have to face what you did." No anger, no threats, just that. I read it over and over until the words blurred. That evening, my sister called. She said she'd talked to Noah and that he didn't want the case to go to trial if I'd just retract everything publicly. "He's giving you a chance, Sabine," she said. "He doesn't even want your money, just a statement." I told her I wouldn't humiliate myself for something that started as a joke. She sighed and said, "You already humiliated yourself. This is your chance to stop." I hung up on her. I went for a drive, aimless, just to escape the house. My phone kept lighting up with messages I didn't want to read. My lawyer, my mom, even the office manager reminding me about professional conduct. Every light felt like judgment. I ended up in a parking lot near Theo's building. I stared at the windows, wondering if he was inside with someone else already, if he'd moved on without a second thought. For the first time, I realized how small I felt, how completely alone I'd made myself. When I got home, there was another envelope waiting on my doorstep. This one digital printouts from Noah's lawyer. A full list of evidence, numbered and itemized. Every photo, post, and message I'd ever sent that mentioned him. Each page stamped Exhibit. The last one was a screenshot of the original post, the one that started everything. Underneath, typed neatly in black ink, was the line, "Public humiliation used for entertainment and gain." I stood in the hallway holding those papers, my chest tight, my breath shallow. For the first time, I didn't feel angry. I felt cornered. Like no matter what I said, there was no clever way out this time. The last page included a single sentence from his lawyer. Client requests mediation within 10 days, or proceeding will advance to full trial. I dropped the folder on the counter and stared at it. 10 days. 10 days to decide if I'd rather swallow my pride or destroy what was left of my life. I told myself I'd think about it, but deep down, I already knew what I'd do. I'd fight. Because admitting fault felt worse than losing everything. By the time the mediation day came, I'd convinced myself I could still win. My lawyer, a young woman named Dana who always looked half exasperated with me, kept reminding me to be concise and show remorse. I told her remorse wasn't the issue, it was principle. She sighed the way people do when they already know you're doomed, but have to keep doing their job. We drove to the office building downtown, the kind with glass walls and silence that hums. My stomach twisted, but I held my chin high. I wasn't about to give Noah or anyone else the satisfaction of seeing me scared. He was already there when I walked in, sitting across the table, clean-shaven, calm, a man I barely recognized. He didn't even glance up when I entered. His cousin Colleen was beside him, all neat posture and polite smiles, the kind of woman who could cut you to pieces without raising her voice. I expected anger, confrontation, maybe even satisfaction. But there was nothing, just quiet control, which somehow felt worse than rage. The mediator, a middle-aged man with tired eyes, started by outlining the process. He said the goal was resolution, not punishment. I almost laughed. Resolution? After months of public humiliation, frozen accounts, and sleepless nights. The irony was unbearable. When it was my turn to speak, I leaned forward, pretending confidence. I said my posts were jokes, exaggerations, and that Noah was using the legal system to punish me emotionally. I even managed to sound calm, proud of how collected I seemed. Noah didn't interrupt once. He just watched me, expressionless, like he was studying something under glass. When his turn came, he spoke slowly, voice low and steady. "This isn't about embarrassment," he said. "It's about losing my name, my work, my dignity." He described how patients cancelled appointments after reading my posts, how one review site had listed rumors about him being unprofessional. He said his parents stopped going to church for a while because of whispers. He didn't raise his voice or dramatize anything. He just told the truth. Each word landed heavier than shouting ever could. I tried to interject, to say people were overreacting, that it wasn't my fault others twisted the meaning. Colleen stopped me gently. "Mrs. Lowell," she said, "these weren't private messages. They were public broadcasts. You made your husband's private life entertainment." I wanted to argue, but the mediator nodded in agreement. That small gesture, two strangers validating him, infuriated me. I said, "So now it's illegal to have a sense of humor?" No one responded. Dana squeezed my arm under the table, whispering for me to let it go. But I couldn't. I said Noah had ignored me for years, that maybe if he'd been more attentive, I wouldn't have needed to seek validation elsewhere. The words sounded weaker than I expected, almost childish. For the first time, Noah looked at me directly. "I was attentive," he said quietly. "You just stopped listening." Silence filled the room. I looked down at my hands, suddenly aware of how shaky they were. The mediator cleared his throat and passed around the proposed settlement, a simple document, 3 pages typed neatly. It listed an official apology, full retraction of all online statements, and payment for damages related to professional harm. No jail time, no long trial, just an admission. I skimmed the lines, my heart thudding louder with every word. Dana whispered, "This is generous, Sabine. He's not after money. He just wants closure." But all I saw was humiliation, a public statement admitting I'd lied, that I'd made things up for attention. The same people who had once called me brave would call me pathetic. My voice came out sharper than I intended. "I'm not signing this." Colleen didn't even flinch. Then we'll proceed to trial, she said calmly. Be aware, everything you've posted will be entered as evidence, including messages you believed were deleted. We have them archived. My throat went dry. How could they still have things I'd deleted months ago? Colleen continued. You've already admitted to several of them in writing. This is your opportunity to end it privately. I glanced at Noah, waiting for some sign of emotion, some flicker that he still cared whether I agreed or not. There was nothing. No anger, no pity, not even exhaustion. Just quiet. That emptiness scared me more than any threat. I blurted out that he was doing this to ruin me, to make me feel small. You already did that yourself, he said simply. For a moment I felt dizzy, like the air had gone out of the room. Dana tried to steady me, whispering that we could take a break, but I shook my head. I stood up and said, He's not a victim. He's just better at pretending than I am. Then I walked out. In the hallway, I leaned against the cold wall, trying to catch my breath. My reflection in the glass door looked like a stranger. Tired, defensive, older. Dana came out a minute later, papers in hand, her voice low. You made your point, but you made theirs stronger, she said. They'll move forward now. I told her I didn't care, but my voice cracked halfway through. When I got home that night, the silence was unbearable. My phone buzzed with notifications, messages from family, headlines from local gossip pages, even strangers tagging me in comments. The story had leaked somehow. One headline read, Woman sued by husband over humiliating post rejects settlement. The comments were brutal. Serves her right. Maybe she'll learn what respect is. Each one cut deeper than the last. I turned off my phone and sat in the dark, staring at the wall. I thought about the letter Noah had written me, the one that said he didn't want revenge. Maybe he'd meant it then, maybe not now. Maybe this was his way of erasing me the same way I'd tried to erase him. I picked up the settlement papers Dana had left on my counter, my name printed beside his, side by side one last time. For the first time, I felt the full weight of what I'd done, not because of the lawsuit, but because of how quiet he'd stayed through all of it. He never yelled, never tried to embarrass me back, never stooped to my level, and somehow that made me look worse than if he'd screamed. The next morning, Dana called to confirm the trial date. Her tone was professional, detached, already moving to logistics. I wanted to tell her I'd changed my mind, but pride held my tongue. I said I'd be there. She paused, then said softly, Sabine, at some point you have to decide whether you want to be right or free. After the call, I went to the window and watched the street. The mail truck stopped at the end of the block, the same one that had brought me that first letter weeks ago. I knew what was coming next. More documents, more reminders. My name in print, his name above mine, always in the position of plaintiff. For once, I didn't post anything. No captions, no quotes, no sarcasm. Just silence. Because I finally understood the one thing I'd refused to see. Sometimes silence isn't weakness. Sometimes it's the loudest answer of all. And it was his turn to have the final word. The morning of the court hearing felt unreal, like waking up inside a version of my life I didn't remember creating. I stood in front of the mirror trying to look composed, brushing my hair again and again, even though it already looked perfect. My lawyer, Dana, had told me to dress modestly, avoid bold colors, and keep my tone respectful. I wore a plain navy dress that made me feel invisible. Maybe that was the point. I wanted to believe I could still control how people saw me, but deep down I knew that part of me was gone. People already had their opinions, loud ones. When we arrived, the courthouse smelled like paper and disinfectant, cold air, fluorescent lights, and the low hum of footsteps on tile. Noah was there with Colleen, standing by the bench, calm as ever. He looked professional, confident, but not smug. His parents sat behind him. My mother sat behind me, her hands folded tight around a tissue. When I glanced back, she gave me a weak smile, the kind that said, I still love you, but I can't defend you. The judge entered and everyone stood. The sound of chairs scraping across the floor echoed like thunder in my head. Then the case began. Noah's side went first. Colleen spoke with quiet precision, reading through evidence in chronological order. Each post, each comment, each text I'd sent or deleted. The screenshots appeared on the projection screen one by one, my words enlarged for everyone to see. There it was in black and white. My sarcasm, my cruelty, my desperate attempts to sound clever. The courtroom stayed silent except for the turning of pages. Then Noah took the stand. He spoke clearly, politely. He didn't exaggerate or dramatize. He explained how my words had affected his work, how patients had questioned his professionalism, how his business had suffered. He mentioned how his father stopped volunteering at the community center because people whispered. Every example came with evidence, emails, messages, records. The more he spoke, the smaller I felt. When it was my turn, Dana nudged me forward. My throat tightened as I took the stand. I told the judge it was all blown out of proportion, that I'd never meant real harm, that it was just humor between adults. My voice sounded thin, rehearsed. The judge asked if I'd posted the statements in question. I said yes, but that they'd been misinterpreted. He asked if I'd deleted them after receiving the cease and desist. I hesitated. Colleen stood and handed over the digital records, showing I'd reposted similar jokes afterward. Dana tried to soften it, saying my actions were impulsive, not malicious. But the damage was done. The judge nodded slowly, made a note, and looked at me like I was someone he'd seen 100 times before. Another person who thought words couldn't wound until they did. During a short recess, I sat alone on a bench in the hallway. People passed by whispering. Some looked at me. Others didn't bother to hide their pity. My mother sat next to me, holding my hand. "You could still apologize," she said softly. "It might not change the outcome, but it would mean something." I wanted to snap at her, but I didn't have the energy. I just nodded. When the session resumed, the judge read his decision. My stomach clenched as he spoke. A formal apology to be published publicly, immediate removal of all related posts, and financial compensation for damages. It wasn't jail, but it felt like exile. I stared at the floor as he said my name, the words liable for defamation echoing louder than anything else. Noah didn't look at me when it ended. He just shook hands with Colleen, gathered his documents, and walked out with quiet dignity. That somehow hurt more than if he'd glared or gloated. He didn't even need to celebrate. His calm was victory enough. My lawyer whispered that it could have been worse, that we'd avoid further legal costs if I complied quickly. I nodded but didn't move. I stayed sitting there until the courtroom was almost empty. Outside, reporters waited. Microphones, cameras, flashes. They called my name, asking how it felt to lose, if I regretted what I'd done. I said nothing, just pushed through the crowd. Dana shielded me as best she could, but it didn't matter. By the time I got home, the headlines were already up. Wife ordered to pay damages after publicly mocking husband. My picture, mid-step, eyes downcast, was everywhere. I closed all the blinds and sat on the living room floor. My phone kept buzzing. Messages from co-workers, old friends, even strangers. Some defended me, saying it was unfair that women still got punished for speaking their minds. Others called me a bully who deserved worse. I turned it face down and let it ring. The silence after each vibration felt heavier than the noise itself. That night, I logged into my social media accounts to delete the posts. Each time I clicked remove, I saw my own face smiling beside the captions that had destroyed everything. They looked different now, meaner, colder, like they'd been written by someone else. When I got to the final post, the one from the barbecue, my hand hesitated over the delete button. For a second, I thought about keeping it, some stubborn part of me whispering that deleting it meant surrender. But then I pressed it. The screen went blank, and I felt the first real quiet I'd felt in months. Days passed in a blur after that. I wrote the public apology, short, formal, detached. It went out on every platform. "I regret my actions and acknowledge the harm caused," it said. I thought maybe no one would care, but people did. Some mocked it, others said it was a start. I didn't respond to any of them. My mother came over with groceries, trying to fill the silence. She said she'd spoken to Noah's mom, who was relieved things were finally over. I asked if he'd said anything about me. She hesitated, then said, "He said he hopes you find peace." That word, peace, felt foreign. I didn't know what to do with it. One afternoon, I went through the remaining boxes of things he'd left behind. Old books, a sweater, some photos I hadn't been able to throw away. In one picture, we were laughing at the beach, mid-sunburn, both ridiculous. I looked at my younger face, full of arrogance disguised as joy, and wondered when I'd started confusing cruelty with power. That evening, I took a walk through the neighborhood. People I used to wave to looked away. The air felt too bright, too honest. When I reached the mailbox, a new envelope waited. Official looking, plain white. I opened it right there on the sidewalk. It was a notice confirming the court had processed the lien against my account. The final step, the legal echo of everything I'd built and broken. I stood there holding it, feeling the wind pick up around me, carrying bits of leaves across the street. Somewhere far off, I heard a car door slam. Life going on, indifferent. For a long moment, I wanted to scream again, to post something, to make people see me. But I didn't. Instead, I went back inside, sat at the kitchen table, and whispered to no one. It was just a joke. The words sounded pathetic in the empty room. Maybe they always had. Don't forget to hit like, subscribe, and turn on the bell so you don't miss the next story. Write in the comments from which city you are watching.